All right, we'll begin. This morning, I'm going to start somewhat unusually. The reason is some unusual things have happened. 3 instances in very recent times have brought into focus something that cannot be ignored. So I'm going to speak a little bit about Ahmaud Arbery, Amy Cooper, and George Floyd. The topic is complicity and the contract. 3 people have done things in the last month or so. 3 instances have occurred that bring into focus the absolute horror of being a Black person in America. The first took place here in Georgia. A man named Ahmaud Arbery was jogging. 2 men, a father and son, jumped into a pickup truck, chased him down, and killed him in cold blood. His only crime was being Black and having the audacity to jog through a neighborhood where people felt like they could take a Black man's life with impunity. The reason that it came to light is because another bystander videoed the situation. Otherwise, there would have been lies told. The lies would have stood up. There had been no evidence. The men who committed that murder of Ahmaud Arbery would have gotten away with it because that was what they expected from the past. As it was, the son who pulled the trigger has been charged with murder. So there's one instance. Another instance took place in Central Park in New York. A woman named Amy Cooper was walking her dog. She's a white woman. She had a big dog, and it was not on a leash. A man asked her, "Please, put your dog on his leash." The man may have had good reason to fear big dogs. But here's what Amy Cooper did. Amy Cooper got out her cell phone and said to him, "I'm going to call the police and tell them that a Black man is threatening my life." Now, what did this tell her? Tell us about it. It tells her that she feels a special relationship with the police.
Noise.
Everyone, please mute if they're going to talk.
I was going to say, Martha Grover is the person who's the noise is coming from. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody,
Thank you,
please
Cindy.
make sure you're muted. Thanks.
Amy Cooper told this man that she was going to call the police and tell them that he was threatening her life. Fortunately, this incident also was videoed. He was not threatening her life. He was simply saying, "Please put your dog on a leash," which is the law. This is the contract I'm talking about. The law. And those people who have responsibility to enforce it. Amy Cooper thought that her special relationship as a white woman with the police would guarantee that this Black man would be arrested and charged with something simply on her representation that he was threatening her life. The third instance is the instance of George Floyd. Now, if you don't know about this, if this has escaped your attention, what happened was a man named George Floyd, a black man, went into a shop. He presented a $20 bill for payment. It turned out the $20 bill was counterfeit. There's no proof whatsoever that he knew it was counterfeit. I myself have tried to pay for something with a counterfeit $20 bill. Fortunately, the shopkeeper that I gave it to didn't call the police, simply returned it to me saying, this is counterfeit. Of course, I was surprised and later took it to the bank and it turned out to be true. But he presented a $20 bill for payment. It was counterfeit. The shop had a policy of calling the police when presented with counterfeit money. Now, did Mr. Floyd act like a criminal? No. He didn't believe he'd done anything that serious. He was sitting in his car talking on the telephone when two police cars rolled up, pulled him out of his car, handcuffed him, put him on the ground, and one officer knelt on his neck, put his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck and suffocated him to death. Suffocated him to death over a period of 7 or 8 minutes. You can find the words, the last words that George Floyd said on the internet. If you read them, your heart will break. So you've heard me talk about the subtle system of agreements that we have that allow us to live and work and study together. In the broader sense, these are the social contract. We have people whose job it is to make sure that that contract works. They are called the police and other authorities. When they, or when people expect, as happened in the case of Ahmaud Arbery, people think that the contract does not apply to them because the person they're dealing with is a black person and that contract does not apply to that black person. Or Amy Cooper, who thinks that the contract works for her and not for the man who's confronting her about not having her dog on a leash. Or when a law officer breaks the law and murders someone in cold blood, what about the contract? This is what I'm saying to you. This is why I'm bringing this to your attention this morning. We as a congregation have to insist that our social contract applies to everyone, regardless of race, creed, color, sexual orientation. No one can abridge the contract. Now, fortunately, the police officer who killed George Floyd was videoed doing it, and so has been charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter, and may have spend as many as 35 years in prison as a result. The other 3 officers who were with him, as yet nothing has been decided about their fate. If you or I had committed a crime of that magnitude and there were 3 people with us who did nothing to prevent the crime, they would be charged as accessories. Let's hope that those 3 police officers are charged as accessories. They could have stopped that cold-blooded murder. What happens if we do not? If we, as individual members of this congregation, do not insist, and you find your own ways. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. You find your own ways to insist that the contract applies to everyone. Otherwise, you, along with me, will be complicit in the violation of this contract. This is not something that can stand. This is not something that can continue to be permitted. It must not. We, each of us, individually, must stand up for the fact that this social contract that makes life possible, living together, applies equally to every human being. Now, before I move on into the talk itself, I'm going to read a short poem by St. Thomas Aquinas. The title is Otherwise the Darkness. Somebody isn't muted, and we're hearing a good deal of noise from them. Whoever that is, please mute yourself. The title, the writer is St. Thomas Aquinas. The title is Otherwise the Darkness. I have a cause. We need those, don't we? Otherwise, the darkness and the cold gets in. Otherwise, the darkness and the cold gets in, and everything starts to ache. My soul has a purpose. It is to love. If I do not fill my heart's vocation, I suffer. Otherwise, the darkness, St. Thomas Aquinas. So before we move on, let's have some discussion about this. What do you think? What do you think about what I've said? What do you think about your response? What do you think about this? Please speak up. Anyone?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Haima.
I want to say something. It's really been heartbreaking, heart-wrenching actually, for last several days, watching the death of the Floyd and all the other cases you mentioned. I'm so glad you gave some time for all of us to heal the pain that we also feel for the country and the people who are suffering. And thank you so much. That's what I want to say. It's a really, really heart-wrenching.
Thank you, Haima. Yes, it is.
It is.
Anyone else?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Sada.
I was watching CNN. I don't watch much TV, only about 10 minutes. They were showing the video over and over again. I turned my head away. I couldn't stand it. How can a man, kill another human being, just like an ant, even an ant, we won't kill like that.
Exactly, Siddharth.
I couldn't stand it. I turned my head away.
Of course.
I don't know. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Sorry.
Well, Siddharth, thank you for that. And now turn that heartbreak into action. Insist that this cannot stand, that you cannot be party as a member of the contract. You cannot be party to this. As you say, George Floyd was killed in cold blood by a man whose job it was to enforce the law, not break the law.
Brother, this is Gaurab.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand like such ruthlessness and the mean stuff that really happened. How can we see this from the light of karma? Means God doesn't want us to do these things. This is not what we are. Is this tamas? It's the basal nature of certain souls who are far away from really realizing God. Is that what leads to them to do this?
There are many explanations, Gaurab, for why this is so. Probably the best explanations you will find are in Swami Vivekananda's talks that he gave in London that are collected together under the title Jnana Yoga. He explains the nature of evil. And yes, as Sri Krishna says in the Gita, there are people whose nature is demonic. So, and he explains how they suffer and how he deals with them. It's chapter 17, Divine and Demonic Tendencies.
And it is quite astounding to see that certain congregations actually say it's not a big deal.
Well, let us not be one of those congregations.
Oh, absolutely.
Let us not just turn our heads away. Yes, we turn our heads away in the moment, but let us turn our face back into the situation. Now we'll hear from Swami Vivekananda in the rest of this morning's talk about karma yoga and how to interact with the machinery of the world, as he calls it, and make a difference.
Yeah, it is quite disturbing. Means I'm still, it's very hard to get over it. It's absolutely.
Let us not get over it.
Yes.
Let us not get over it. Let that motive power of our righteous anger and our indignation that the contract that is so waved in our face,
yes,
that it only applies to white people. No. Thank you for those comments, Gaurab. Anyone else?
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Brother, this is Sundar here.
Yes, Sundar.
Yes, I just feel that like
Keith was starting to
we need to have like a lot of love and compassion. Instead of that, like the rule of the law is something like tough on crime and things like that. People take it to the extremes and do such things. Instead of that, like small children and everyone needs to be thought of love and compassion, as Buddha tells. Like that is the foundation. So that is one thing, and since that is missing, like it is the other things, like people are doing so many things. If they have love for fellow human beings, like then the color won't matter, whether it's white or black or brown, whatever it is.
Well, the fact is, Sundar, as I pointed out, and as Krishna points out in the Gita, thank you for those comments, and you're absolutely right. Love is the solution. That's why I read what I read from St. Thomas Aquinas. But there are people of demonic tendencies, and they must not be allowed to get away with the things that they do. They must not be allowed to get away with it, especially those people who are responsible for enforcing the law, the police departments. And we know that this is not the first time something like this has happened. This is just one of the rare times that it has been so well documented that it's incontrovertible what happened. There's no way around it. Keith, you were about to say something.
Yeah, so this kind of thing, as a black man, we grow up inherently afraid of the police, like from day one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because these kind of things, and I know it's horrible for everyone to see it, but this has been happening in our community since we landed on this rock we call the United States of America. This is just how it has always been. It's just a matter of it being seen now. And the big problem is there is a systematic fear, irrational fear of black men that has gotten to the point where some folks don't really see us as human.
Oh, yes.
And when you don't see, it's almost like when you go to war, you're trained to not see the enemy as human because it makes it easier for you to do certain things to them.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people in this country, unfortunately, that see us as an enemy without even knowing us. And that's why I saw a comment on Facebook. If he would have done that to a dog, they'd have been complete and total outrage. But it was done to one of us, and a lot of people are going, well, he was just doing his job. So just know that this is something that we live with every day. I've got a 21-year-old son that I've got to worry about, nicest kids you ever know, but I've got to worry about him just going outside because the police might do anything to him.
Yes.
And kind of with impunity. So this is just what we go through. It's tough. We'll get through it. But just know this happens all the time.
Believe me, I do know.
Yeah.
This, one of the reasons that I made this presentation this morning is that Trevor Noah of The Daily Show made a very moving and very poignant and very intelligent 18-minute video that will be posted with this morning's talk on the website. I encourage every one of you to listen to it, to watch it, because Trevor Noah explains in detail what Keith just talked about. The fact that it isn't that the black person is invisible, the black person is inherently seen as a threat, particularly the black man. And, Haima could tell us about guilt, social guilt and all of the things that ride along, having enslaved these people, of course we fear them. But this white person's privilege that allowed those people to kill Ahmaud Arbery without even a second thought, thinking they would get away with it because they could lie, but they were caught up. So there's been this 3 instances in rapid succession where it's so highlighted the difference between how white people see themselves and how black people are treated. This is the contract, and this is why I'm saying, if we do not do something, if we do not make ourselves known and felt, we are complicit. This will not continue if enough of us are not complicit.
Brother Shankara.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that I believe racism and police brutality is rooted in scarcity and our socioeconomic system of capitalism. And until we confront this, that I believe there will continue to be more cases
Well,
such as this.
I'm sure that you're absolutely right that there is a connection between the greed and acquisitiveness of white people, particularly those at the top, who are perfectly willing to allow these atrocities to occur to protect their position. So, though capitalism itself cannot be said to be at fault, the way it's practiced certainly can be. Predatory capitalism is now the order of the day.
Hey, this is Tom. I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, Tom, please speak up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but speak up a little bit.
Okay, I'm talking really loud. I think I have some problem with my connection. Can you hear me okay now?
Well, we're doing our best. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to shout. But the way to do something about this, I think, is to vote. I know people that go to protest, but they don't vote. They feel like it's hopeless to vote. And it's important to vote, and to vote in the little local elections, to find out who are the candidates that are going to do the things that we want done and who are the bad candidates. It's awkward for me to shout, so I think I'm going to sign off now. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate what you said. And of course, I challenged each of us to find our own way to deal with this. Of course, as part of the contract, we must vote. Yes, we must vote. We must make ourselves, as Tom said, make ourselves informed about who will make sure the contract applies to everyone equally, and then vote for those people. Don't think that voting doesn't matter. It does matter. Of course it matters. But each of us must find our own way beyond that to make.
Vote in local elections where you can actually make a difference.
Vote in local elections, Tom said. Yes, absolutely.
And it's hard to find out who to vote for because we don't have a lot of knowledge about the people in the local elections. But find somebody who follows it closely, who you trust, and get information from them about who to vote for.
Thank you, Tom. I think that's very good advice.
Can you hear me, Brother Shankar?
Yes, I can, Bhagavad.
I get a feeling we are still addressing the branches when the problem is in the roots. That's the reason why we are talking about the black and the white, which is pertinent to this country, but it is more pertinent to the ability of the human beings to exploit someone and go ahead and do it. So it's not only in this country. In India, I have seen it, how the untouchables were treated by the Hindus, upper caste Hindus. The same upper caste Hindus were treated by the English people in the same abusive way. So that cycle of protection I've seen, and what we have to do is to eradicate from the very roots the ability of one human being to torture in an unjust way, to inflict injustice. That has to be fought, because I have worked at Grady Hospital. I have worked with the black people all the time, and boy, did I love them, and they loved me. And there was nothing like black and white, either in their mind or my mind. We thank God that I have a brown color, so I can mix with both. But that is not the point. This hatred has got to be taken out from the human roots, rather than just from one community or one country. Otherwise, it will keep on doing. Either here, you address the situation in America, it will start in Africa. You do it in Africa, it will start in Rhodesia, and so on and so forth.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right, Bhagavad. It must be rooted out at the source. But in the meantime, it's our responsibility as members of this contract to make sure that it is enforced equally here, as Tom Carr said, in our local elections. Make sure we're voting for the person who will make sure that this contract, this social contract, applies equally to everyone. There is no way around that. We must do it here and now as best we can and find our own ways to make our influence felt. And there are many, many ways. A little research on the internet will give you some good pointers. If you listen to this 18-minute video by Trevor Noah, which I hope you will, he will give you some good pointers. It's a matter of adjustment. It's a matter of adjustment. Our comfort level must be disturbed. We cannot go back to simply allowing the body politic to function as it has. We must make our influence felt. Otherwise, we are complicit.
Brother Shankar?
Yes.
My feeling is that election is definitely one of them, in the sense that it will establish a legal justice and it will somewhat tone down the deep underlying hatred we have for each other. But I think this country needs to develop a zero tolerance for any racial discrimination. Zero.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't even whisper. And you don't whisper because you don't think that way.
Well,
That is our aim.
definitely, Bhagavad. The question is how. And so now we'll take up the question of karma yoga as taught to us by Swami Vivekananda. Unless there's some other very pressing comment, I'd like to take up what Vivekananda says about how to make spiritual practice work for us in making a difference in the world. Now,
Brother Shankar,
yes,
I just have one comment, and I'll let you go. After I saw this horrified stuff, I immediately called my oldest son in LA, just checking and see how things are going, how he's reacting, because these kids are very heroic and they want to do something, they want to march and do. So I just called him and I said, you know, violence is not the answer. None of us like violence. We try to be non-violent mostly. And he stopped me and made me look at the history for a minute. Mom, look back. When Martin Luther King tried to do change, they killed him. And when Gandhi tried to change, they killed him too. Look at these leaders who tried to do silently, non-violently, trying to do things, make changes in the world. Every one of them got killed. Maybe this is the answer. No, we really need to see a change. And I really had to look back and just stop what I was saying, you know.
well, you know, this is one of the things that that Trevor Noah addresses.
Yes.
Why are there riots? Why are there riots? And his answer is very, very well worth listening to.
That's exactly my son said. Thank you, Brother Shankara, for the time.
You bet.
And Shankara,
Yes, Lord.
just to mention that the League of Women Voters is a great resource for finding out about candidates.
To repeat what Laurie said, and she's absolutely right, I've relied on it for many, many years. The League of Women Voters is a good resource for finding out in detail, not only about candidates, but about ballot initiatives and so on, because their explanations are nonpartisan and very fair-minded. So if you're looking for something some guidance, the League of Women Voters is a good place to turn. Okay, I'm going to skip the announcements. If you want to read them, you can read them in the newsletter or you can read them online, because this talk will be posted online, the text will be posted online. So I'm going to go ahead with the talk. And I'm also going to skip the little introduction about karma yoga, because most of us have heard this before. But I will just say this. In practicing karma yoga, even before knowing the divine presence, you hold firmly to the belief that the presence is within each person or other living being that you interact with or serve. Working and abiding in this spirit, you are increasingly able to release attachment to your activities and their results. This yields the freedom and contentment promised by karma yoga. And at the same time, you will have done good in the world. So, a karma yogi's response to transformation. Now, I'm going to read again this short poem by St. Thomas Aquinas, because it so applies to what we're talking about. The title is Otherwise the Darkness. I have a cause. We need those, don't we? Otherwise the darkness and the cold gets in and everything starts to ache. My soul has a purpose. It is to love. If I do not fulfill my heart's vocation, I suffer. We, our entire planet, seem to be starting a major transformation. We cannot see far ahead. Experts, healthcare scientists, economists, political leaders are not much help. They don't have meaningful precedents for something like this. So what they offer are their best guesses and sometimes conflicting day-to-day guidance. In the face of such uncertainty, it would be easy to give way to fear and despair. Fortunately, as spiritual aspirants, we have a powerful alternative, the 4 yogas as taught to us by Swami Vivekananda, Swamiji. Last month, we looked at how a bhakti yogi could respond to transformation. This morning, we'll take up karma yoga. In June and July, Raja Yoga and Jnana Yoga. We'll see what each yoga teaches us about how to live calmly and constructively during a great wave of change. Now, please understand, what I'm about to say is not meant as personal instruction. It is not dogma. It is a review of the principles and practices of karma yoga as they apply to the situation we find ourselves in now. So how might a karma yogi, a karmi, deal with what we're facing? Let's start from principle, the abandonment of selfishness. Sri Ramakrishna said, serve Jiva as Shiva. Serve each human being as the divine person. That's what serve Shiva as Jiva means. Serve each human being as the divine person. Actually, it means everything that breathes. As Vivekananda said, where shall we go to find God, if not in our own hearts and in every living being? So it doesn't mean just human beings, but especially human beings. With that as her prime directive, a karmi's first impulse might be to look closely at how and why other people are suffering. Then, reviewing her resources and capabilities, determine what she can do to be of service. Her thoughts would not be focused on herself. Is this setting too high an ideal? This morning we'll see what Swamiji says about that in Karma Yoga, a collection of his talks, and we'll discuss the fearlessness and inner peace a karma yogi finds even in the most difficult circumstances when Swamiji's teachings are followed. So now I'm going to read a long passage from Swami Vivekananda with my commentary as we go along. This is from Swamiji's talk, The Ideal of Karma Yoga. The world's wheel within wheel is a terrible mechanism. If we put our hands in it, as soon as we are caught, we are gone. We all think that when we have done a certain duty, we shall be at rest. But before we have done a part of that duty, another is already in waiting. We are all being dragged along by this mighty, complex world machine. There are only two ways out of this. One is to give up all concerns with the machine, to let it go and stand aside, to give up our desires. That is very easy to say, but it is almost impossible to do. I do not know whether in 20 millions of men one can do that. That's how difficult Jnana Yoga is, because that's what he was describing, saying not this, not that, to all of your desires. That's Jnana Yoga. He says, I do not know whether in 20 millions of men one can do that. The other way is to plunge into the world and learn the secret of work. And that is the way of Karma Yoga. Do not fly away from the wheels of the world machine, but stand inside it and learn the secret of work. Through proper work done inside, it is also possible to come out. Through this, the machinery itself is the way out. We have seen what work is. It is part of nature's foundation, and it goes on always. Those that believe in God understand this belief because they know that God is not an incapable being as will need our help. Now, what does he mean? Those that believe in God. Belief in God is not an intellectual thing. Belief in God comes from the heart. Belief in God comes from the soul. And so when we have this understanding, this soul, heart understanding of God, we understand the vastness and the power of the divine being. And so as the Swamiji says, God is not such as an incapable being as will need our help. So that's not why we practice Karma Yoga. Although this universe will go although this universe will go on always, our goal is freedom. Our goal is unselfishness. And according to Karma Yoga, that goal is to be reached through work. Now, as always, Swamiji wants to make sure we understand something. So he says, all ideas of making the world perfectly happy may be good as motive power for fanatics, but we must know that fanaticism brings forth as much evil as good. In other words, when we try to make everything all right, when we think, oh, we can fix it all. No, that's fanaticism. First of all, it's taking God's position. And secondly, it is quixotic. It is hopeless. So because it is hopeless and inevitably becomes self-involved, self-motivated, as fanatics are, it brings as much evil as good. The karma yogi asks why you require any motive to work other than the inborn love of freedom. The karma yogi asks why you require any motive to work other than the inborn love of freedom. Be beyond the common worldly motives. What are the common worldly motives? Name, fame, honor, riches. This is why it's said in Chaitanya's prayer, O Lord and soul of the universe, mine is no prayer for wealth or retinue, the playthings of lust or the toys of fame. Those are the common worldly motives. Swamiji quotes from Krishna in the Gita, to work you have the right, but not to the fruits thereof. So if you're working for the fruits, hopeless condition, suffering, karmic, what does it mean, freedom? Freedom means free from karma, free from the bonds of karma. So you, to work you have the right, but not to the fruits thereof. Man can train himself to know and to practice that, says the karma yogi. When the idea of doing good becomes a part of his very being, he will not seek any motive outside. Why would it become a part of your very being? Because you understand I'm not working for me as a little being. I'm working to free that inner being, that great soul that is behind. I'm working to free that. So it becomes a part of your being to do good simply because to do otherwise is to further imprison or keep imprisoned that great soul. Let us do good because it is good to do good. He who does good work, even in order to get to heaven, binds himself down, says the karma yogi. If we go to heaven, what then? We have the desires that take us to heaven, and that means we will simply be reborn again. From heaven, we are reborn again. We're back within the terrible world machine, having to learn all over again. Any work that is done with the least selfish motive, instead of making us free, forges one more chain for our feet. In other words, it forges the chain of karma that pulls us back here. So the only way is to give up the fruits of work, to be unattached to them. Know that this world is not we, nor we this world, that we are really not the body, and that we really do not work. We are the self, eternally at rest and at peace. What does it mean? We're not the body, we're not, as Krishna points out in chapter 3 of the Gita. The doer is the divine force represented as the gunas. And the gunas are what are doing. And so we have our participation as individual beings, seeming to be individual beings, but our participation must not be one of any kind of attachment, because that which arises goes away. And so we see that from the position of the witness, we see Yes, this work is going on. It's better to do good work than evil work. And it's better to do work that is unattached to any idea of results, because that doesn't produce any karma. So we are the self, eternally at rest and at peace, that represents itself in us. Our first experience of it is as the witness being, the witness that we simply watch what's going on. Why then should we be bound by anything? It is very good to say that we should be perfectly non-attached, but what is the way to do it? Every good work we do without any ulterior motive, instead of forging a new chain, will break one of the links in the existing chain. This is exactly the same thing that Holy Mother says. If you do your work in this spirit, destiny herself will strike from the book of record what is written there about you, that the karmas that are the chains will be stricken from the record. You won't be bound. Every good thought. Now, this is some guidance about how for us to make a difference in the world. Every good thought that we send to the world without thinking of any return will be stored up there and break one link in the chain and make us purer and purer until we become the purest of mortals. So that's why that description of how the karma yogi might approach this situation now, assessing what is the nature of suffering that is going on around me, and then looking at the resources and capabilities that that karma yogi has, she will say, what can I do? What can I really do that will make a difference? Not for me. What can I do that will really make a difference? And when you do that, as the Swami said, every good thought that we send to the world without thinking of any return will be stored up there and break one link in the chain and make us purer and purer until we become the purest of mortals. So we have just a few minutes left. If there's anyone who would like to ask a question or make a comment, as you know, this is the best part. This is where we study the art of spirituality together, and we share with one another our feelings and our concerns and our questions, so that we understand that we are in this together. Please, anyone.
Gary,
Yes.
this is Beverly.
Hello, Beverly.
Hi.
Beverly's my dear friend in California.
I just wanted to say earlier when we talked about what we could do, one of the things that since the civil rights movement in the 1960s I have tried to do is to analyze my generalizations about people and to catch myself in stereotyping people. And you know that I've been quite a feminist, and you used to catch me being really, really nasty about men in general. And fortunately, God sent me a grandson, which softened me greatly and taught me much. But the generalization of people is really dangerous, and it's where all of us fall down. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Absolutely, Beverly. You're so right. You know, if we generalize people by the color of their skin, by their sexual orientation, by their what religion they belong to, no, what is it that's in front of us? What is it that we're really dealing with? If those two men had had a conversation with Ahmad Abri and said, "What are you doing here?" And he just said, "Oh, I'm just jogging." And they could see that he was a fine fellow by their intuition. But no, they generalized, as you said. He was a black man who had the audacity to run through their neighborhood. So the generalization, this stereotyping, it is the enemy of any clear thinking. Thank you, Beverly, and thank you for being with us.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, Uma.
Okay. I want to share a few of my thoughts.
Please.
About the 3 very tragic incidents that you described.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure each one of us, when we read it and saw it over and over again on TV and everywhere, we were deeply disturbed.
Mm-hmm.
And as painful it was to see even, I was thinking, what is the way out? And the way out in this connection was something that our mayor, I don't know how to correctly pronounce her name, Kesha, Mayor Kesha, she wrote very, very beautifully, not only wrote, but her approach I liked. She identified with these victims as a mother. She said, I'm a mother with a teenage son. And I am so, mortified to even think that he would be there and somebody would kill him. So what she said, that the root of this entire, animosity, color consciousness, and discrimination, it has been going on since centuries. And as Kent mentioned right now, that this has been going on for ages. Only now it is coming out. So it has to be uprooted. My point is, of course, we all agree. But how to do it? Should we pay tit for tat? No. Gandhiji said, and Martin Luther King said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth will not be the answer to eradicate this from the roots. So the answer has to be 2 things, non-violence and love.
Yes.
And non-violence, the way Gandhiji acted on this discrimination was that you have to not stay outside and complicit, but you have to plunge in. You mentioned, Brother Shankar, the second way. So that is the second way is more compassionate. That you plunge in, but you do not retaliate You stand for your principles. That's what I think.
Yes, and what is the principle? The principle is that the divine being is in even your oppressor. So you practice satyagraha in confronting it. Yes, this is the one good thought, even that good thought. This makes a tremendous difference.
Yes.
It doesn't mean it's going to correct it in this moment. There
No.
are no magic bullets.
No.
But
who
if
said
you keep on keeping on, it will make a difference.
And Brother Shankara, I remember Gandhiji's quote when somebody said, what is this sense? You get killed to save people from killing. But Gandhiji said, somebody said, I think, that even though Martin Luther King was killed and Gandhi was killed and many others, they could not kill the cause for which they fought.
No.
So Gandhiji said, one Gandhi dies, there will be many more Gandhis that will arise from my ashes.
Yes.
And they will fight again and again. So there is never going to be an end to these things, what I'm saying. But nevertheless, we must put in a very sensible, non-violent, and fair way of protesting this. And we should all, if all human beings stand together, there is power in collective consciousness and collective effort.
Yes. Thank you for that contribution, Uma. That's exactly right. We must together stand for the contract.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're complicit in allowing it to be broken. Anyone else? This is good.
Yes, I'd like to say something.
Yes, please. This is Robert.
Yeah. I'm currently studying the Mahabharata.
Uh-huh.
And I have found a very close parallel to what is stated there and what is going on right now in this world.
Uh-huh.
And it has given me some understanding of it. And I would like to recommend if chapter 42 specifically.
Chapter 42 of the Mahabharata is the recommendation from Robert.
Yeah, speaks directly to this situation that this world is in right now.
Thank you, Robert. There's in the scriptures, there are in sub-scriptures, there are always going to be great clues for our, for those of you who are so inclined. Reading the Devi Mahatmyam, the Chandi, will also give you some sense about what's going on. If you remember, there was a talk last month called A Mother's Love, earlier this month, on Mother's Day, called A Mother's Love, that had to do with that particular aspect of how it's reflected in the Chandi. Thank you, Robert. Chapter 42 of the Mahabharata. Anyone else? All right. Thank you all for being with us this morning. We'll close with this. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let this infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us, and to all suffering, and to all joyous beings everywhere. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. Any final word from anyone? All right.
Could you stay on the line after everybody shuts up, Brother Shankara? I have one question for you.
Why don't you give me a call, Brahmadas, because otherwise it'll be recorded.
Okay, no problem.
And if you don't, that just means that there's work cutting it off from the recording. So why don't you just give me a call, would you?
I will do that.
Okay, I'm gonna end the meeting there. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga.